I loved living here, but I didn't love roommates, and that was the only way that it was going to make sense. So I moved up. It's not upstate technically. I moved to Kingston.
Like technically it is upstate from here, but it is not technically upstate.
Upstate is after Albany and up.
Yeah.
So we got to get that clear for everybody.
So it was, in some sense, New York was a good place to be a musician?
It was great. I mean, I was writing all the time, and I was depressed all the time, and I didn't have enough money all the time. So it was a perfect situation to...
What's the connection between the writing and the depression? Did the writing stave off the depression? Was the writing inspired by the depression?
I think, this is...
It's hard to entangle, I'm sure.
No, it's actually not. The thing is I think I'm glad where I live now. I mean, sometimes it feels a little slow compared to the places I've lived. But what I wrote about was this kind of how I wanted to be somewhere, how I didn't want to be in the city, kind of, and how I didn't want to be in these relationships. But I was, just constantly living through these stories and then writing them and then kind of idealizing, going back to where I grew up as like this kind of knowing that things could be okay, except that, I didn't have the best childhood either. So I don't know why I was always romanticizing that either.
Are you finally in a place now where you're not thinking about where else you might live?
Yeah. I go to therapy. That's right.
You probably answered it the right way, but I almost mean that literally.
Yeah, I do, but I realize that everywhere is going to have its thing. And I love where I live. I work on my house. I run with my dog. And then I get to come here and freeze my ass off, and it's fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love coming down here because it all of a sudden I'm lost on a subway and kind of, okay, I got to get my bearings, but I do quickly, and there's a lot of energy here, so I love it.
Do you feel that the city itself was a source of depression for you?
No, I probably just am a depressed person. I can't blame.
Well, I had a situation. Thankfully, it's knock on wood behind me now. Where I was freelancing because I was kind of in between jobs, and I realized that I wasn't really leaving 2 or 3 block radius. At which point it was like, why am I paying to live in New York if I'm not actually going out and experiencing the joys of the city?
I did the same thing, but I would just wander. I mean, I always think about that when I come back. I see so much more when I come back for a day or two than I did for weeks, either around the corner from here where I first lived or in all the parts of Brooklyn. I lived in every part of Brooklyn that there is, almost. But I wasn't an adventurer totally, except for just kind of that kind of weird wandering walking where you're not heading anywhere.
Hopefully you'll stumble on something interesting. But
if you don't. But seldom would that happen.
Sure.
And
well, it's New York. There's always something interesting.
Of course. I mean, you're lost somewhere. And, you have to find your way back home.
Yeah. I do get the sense, though, New York just kind of amplifies everything. Depression is like that, too. It's almost ironic, that you can feel that sort of that oppressive sense of loneliness in a city of 8 million people. And,
that was probably the most acute loneliness I've ever felt, but at the same time, I did it to myself, and it was strange how much I could focus with all the noise around me, even with roommates, and when I lived in Greenpoint, and how that kind of pushed me further into my head. So I don't want to do it again. I used to be able to write full songs without a guitar, without a computer, without any kind of, everything. I was so deep in my head here.
That doesn't sound necessarily like a bad thing.
It's not, but the rest of my life stank. Everything.
When you withdraw and focus on your art.
Yeah, and there's probably other substances that fall into that used to fall into the pot that I wouldn't, that...
You weren't drinking art straight. You had a mixer.
There are things, but it's better. I just didn't know how. I think I also, I'm nervous around a lot of people. It's good to move to a city when you're nervous in front of and around people. Yeah. That's sarcasm.
You're generally an introvert by nature?
I'm not like one-on-one or with people I know, but Yeah.
No, so you have that absolutely makes you an introvert.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
that's the thing. You know, this is something I've sort of figured out about myself. I'd had an ex who once asked me, like, I don't understand how you can, you know, do a podcast and talk to a stranger or go on stage or go on TV and be fine. But if I take you to a party, you don't know anyone, you completely shut down. And that I think those things can be hard for people to reconcile in themselves, that, you know, you're obviously a performer and you do a lot of interviews, and, you know, and you're kind of like putting yourself out there, you're talking to strangers in that way, in a performative way, but in a kind of more crowded sort of casual situation, you tend to shut down a bit.
Yeah. I mean, parties, I don't know why I idealize parties too, because they're seldom great. And I don't know, dancing in public, all these things have kind of they can be painful, but they can also be amazing. I think I don't know how it is weird to think about getting on stage in front of people and performing and being almost too shy to then talk to them sometimes. But I loved performing. I mean, I'm going to come back to it. I have to work my way back to it.
Where are you right now with all of that?
I'm close. Like, we're going to talk totally in kind of sound shapes or esoteric.
Well, let's back up a second, you know, and me, you know, I've been following your stuff for a while. I actually interviewed you a long time ago when the Winter EP came out. That must have been
Winter Songs with the
Hotel. And,
wow.
Yeah, a long time ago for like probably Skyscraper or something like that.
That's
you know,
cool. I wasn't a dick, was I?
No.
Okay, good.
So.
Good.
Well, then if you were a dick, I would remember. It's
okay,
one,
good.
You know what I mean?
Because this could be one of those confrontation, intervention type things.
You know, I was going back and kind of reading, you know, your most, first of all, not a ton of super recent interviews, and then the ones from a few years ago were all about you quitting music.
Yeah, there are two reasons for saying that. One, you want to get these sleazy industry people off, like you want to shake them off your tail.
You're faking your own death?
A little bit. And then also, I also didn't want to do this with the kind of expectation. The tour release schedule of life is just something I don't want to participate in again.
It's something that in your like early 20s, it's much easier to deal with, I would assume.
I don't even know if it was easy then. I think it's a lot of the people we worked with. I mean, I've worked with some great people, but there were a lot of people that just didn't care about either us as a band, me as a person, what you go through to have to like go on tour, make sure everyone stays alive and doesn't kill each other. I guess that's the same thing, but it just got to be too much. And then people that I trusted just were pushing me and then trying to get things from me. And we've kind of slowly built back up writing albums and releasing them. And I'm excited about kind of getting back into it again.
Is Matt Ponpier dead?
I'm going to always play those songs.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't want to show up and say my name. I cannot say my name this much anymore. It was hard to say my name that much.
What does that mean?
You just always like, you know.
Oh, like
we're Matt Pompier.
Yeah.
Hello, Houston.
It's so funny because I always thought that, you know, the kind of the pain in the ass of having that name would be the PA part and not living in PA.
Yeah, I mean, people told me to change it. I really liked Philly. I liked the kind of the arc of the time I lived there and how we kind of built up there. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't want to change that. But then, you know, when I do something again, when we release this album we're working on that's taking forever, I want it to be a group effort, and I want everyone to feel the same amount of pain that I'm feeling. But no,
That's very thoughtful of you, Matt.
I want everyone to share, like, touring. I think that, hey, after cost, let's just split it all, okay? Because we're all in this together, and if everyone were just, I don't feel like waking people up. Like, wake up, you know. Everybody does this, and
you don't want to have to be dad.
I don't want a tour manager, and I don't want to be a tour manager in that situation. Now, I don't mind doing tour managing for other people, but not for myself, and not for, like, I want people to see that, you know, you can make money at music and you can enjoy it too, but it really does take kind of an egalitarian effort to really do it. And I've come close with people, but a lot of bandmates too, you know, it's hard. It's ego. My name was on the marquee.
Yeah.
I didn't want that. I have an ego, but it's not in the name or in anything that's obvious. It's in a strange place, and I can't, probably shouldn't talk about it. No, I don't know.
Why wasn't there a proper band name?
I tried a few times in Philly, and I think people liked the separation. They liked, it was funny because when good things were happen, I would include everyone, but when bad things happened, I just had to take it all, like bad reviews. Yeah. You get a bad review, and it's my name there, and it's, and then I would make myself more obscure and more obtuse in interviews, and I don't think I was helping myself. Like, that's probably another reason why I kind of wanted to be like, okay, you don't have to kill yourself and tour to do something. But I do like performing. I do want to play all, like, I don't play my own songs day to day. I do them when I get ready to tour, and by that point I've totally forgotten them and have to relearn them, and that's always exciting. That's like you can do them different ways. You can, I don't know. I almost have optimism about it.
I'll watch those old interviews with Bob Dylan, and doing what I do for a living, I tend to have empathy for the interviewer. Yeah,
he wasn't always so nice to the...
Yeah, I'm wondering if you feel like a sense of empathy for him at him having that kind of reaction because, one, it's his name on the project, and two, because of the way he writes, people feel the need to kind of really to prod.
Well, he was Bob Dylan, so he kind of could do whatever he wanted to, and I think I think that persona was one he was quick to adopt. I think he changed his name to this kind of, slick name and kind of, and he was it was a brilliant person who could outthink someone before, they were done questioning him. I don't know. Sometimes what he did seemed kind of cruel. But he's brilliant. I always, I waver on Bob Dylan, like, through stages. Like, I'll worship him, and then I won't want to hear him for a few months. And then you come back, and... but I think... I could never do that. Yeah. I wouldn't want to... I can't adopt a persona. That's probably one problem I've always had, is I can never... I've worn tighter trousers, and I've, had... nice jackets and but that has never made me any different. So I could never, especially at parties or when I lived in New York and, you're rubbing elbows with all sorts of fancy pants and other bands. And I would just open my mouth and sound like some kind of hayseed.
Do you feel though that being too transparent or too honest has been a detriment to you?
Only to music industry people. I wouldn't want to do it any other way. Those people, because they say they're your friend, and you're like, you're my friend, and now you're going to take all my money, and that's just gross. But that's to everyone in music, and everyone falls for it too.
Sure. And you had heard that story a billion times before you fell for it.
Yeah, but you fall for it because you're like, oh, I love, I want to keep making music. I never wanted to be rich. Early on, when it's funny because early on, we licensed music to TV and film, and people were like, "That's a sellout." Now people couldn't license music fast enough. Yeah.
So it's the only way to make money.
Streaming does make money. Labels aren't as clear as they could be. They kind of obscure these facts from people. You find that out when you put stuff out on your own on a on a smaller level, like. If you're doing pretty well as a band and you're getting streams, you are making money. And
you think that so at your level right now, without record label interference, you could make a living from streaming?
No, but but it doesn't hurt, and it's just a hustle kind of, and it's a good hustle. Like, I do a bunch of things, and we work on several projects at once, and I always just keep feeling stronger as I get older, which is crazy. Like I run more, I work out more, not in like an obsessive way, but it's just, I guess it's this dog that makes me do all that. But, or I don't know, I just feel more in control of what's happening around me, and I enjoy that. It's nice to have a label tell you they love you and take you out to dinner, but you're paying for that dinner.
Yeah.
They're billing you back for it.
Yeah.
And then everything else too.
The idea of quitting music then was never really about quitting music.
No, it was just so that I would not be sued or held accountable for some of the kind of moves that I was making.
Did it work?
Marginally. I mean, I've gotten some lawyers to help me get things from some people, really cool people that will work pro bono.
Yeah.
I could use a couple more and then I could be done. I want my masters back, If I can get all my masters back, then I'll be happy.
So it was less about changing the kind of music that you wanted to make and more about regaining control of the older stuff?
Yeah. It was gaining control of the business part, but also gaining control of like it's a hard word to say, trajectory. I didn't want to keep jumping into like it's a big setup to do an album and then tour on it and then invest money in it. And I even did it myself a couple of times, and mostly, it was successful, but it was hard. It was kind of like, this is why people have labels. This is why people have people helping them, because it's a lot of work. So I want to make sure that I'm set up enough in advance, because when you do things yourself too, you fall behind. There's no one yelling at you except for yourself. And I'm pretty easy on myself these days, mostly. I'm looking forward to it. My bandmate is having another child. He won't, so that will affect. But then how we do one thing, but then we started to think about.
Is that Chris?
Yeah, Chris Hansen. He's pretty amazing.
He's kind of your life mate at this point.
He's my life mate.
Yeah.
And it's true, because we get along really well, and then we argue really well, and he's brilliant. He's a brilliant musician, and I just have a bunch of sloppy ideas, and he makes the stuff we do coherent. And he's a good guy, but we drive each other crazy too.
Do you feel like you've become more or less of a micromanager as you've gone on in your career?
I'm probably more, because there's more stuff, like there's more elements now that fall under my control. Like everything that happens monetarily, I can see it all.
There's two ways you could have taken that answer, right? There was either the business side or the music side.
Well, you got to start with the business side,
because
if you're not, and that's another thing. Like a lot of people I know, the
business is sort of an afterthought.
They let they'll work with a label or a manager, and they'll kind of push that to the side. That's
precisely why people work with labels and managers, right?
No,
it shouldn't be, but that's why a lot of people do.
And the problem is they're avoiding this thing, like really taking into account their taxes, how they want their money to be, how much money they are going to need, and you live, and I lived in this fantasy land for a long, long time, and then it just kind of came crashing down that I don't have money. And
how did it come crashing down? I mean, where were you? What was the circumstance?
Oh gosh, I don't want to talk bad about people, but I was I recorded a few albums just down the street from here, Emblems and several hours later, and then we'd work on a bunch of them not upstate, at Bearsville Studios, and it was such a great time. We were so excited, but I didn't pay attention to anything that was happening financially. I just thought, I was working with this manager, and he was doing our label stuff, and he had my back. He was my friend. That's just not the way it is when the money gets tight.
Yeah.
So it was a really inspiring time, because when you don't have to think about stuff like that, it's great, but you're always going to have to, and it's not a bad thing if you can incorporate it. I mean, this sounds boring. This is but we're having this talk probably, or I'm veering there because it's tax time and I have everything laid out, and and I try to make it fun now instead of this terrifying, micromanage that, but also, micromanage the process. But our process is always fluid. So since Chris is having a kid, and since we're kind of 3/4 of a way through an album, but if once he has the next kid, he's going to be kind of hard to reach. And I just realized, I was like, why don't we score something through our side project that that just feels good right now and doesn't stress us out. And that's what's crazy. It's like we can totally take this kind of left turn and enjoy what we're doing and then see how it turns out. I mean, maybe I'll have the nicest kid in the world. It's possible. It's probably not going to happen, but it's possible. But then we can just jump back into this. Whereas if we go at what we're doing with this kind of deadline, everyone has a deadline, but I think it would kill what's good about what we're making in that realm. So we're just, since I don't like winter, we're kind of scoring summer in a more, in a way that will make sense and line up with summer when it happens. So it's a very vague feeling, but I want to feel that, and I want to write about it, bring back literature and read about summer and kind of, by the time summer gets here, it's going to be too hot and everything smells like garbage and all that. But that kind of summer feeling that you have in winter where it's perfect and you can really just lose yourself in it is where we just decided to turn. So that's what's happening.
It is interesting how much of your work is defined specifically not just by seasons, but by those two seasons.
Well, I spread it around. Spring always feels so like it's gone before it's there.
Sure. Especially in New York.
Yeah. I always wanted to get away from I don't want to write about nature and I don't want to write about... It's all that really seems tangible now. I'm not going to write about my cell phone and the things that I see on it, although that comes into music now more and more in kind of... I'm trying to make it funny because this is a strange new world we're in, but it all pushes me back to being outside more and reconnecting with this thing. And I don't want to be boring and do here's summer one more time. You've heard it before, but now I'm going to do it again.
You know the Jonathan Richman song "Springtime in New York"? Are you familiar with that one?
I don't, but there's a song, a Jonathan Richman song that I was listening to over and over again just recently. Off of I think it's I, Jonathan. Is that
okay? That's
record.
Yeah, it's one of his earlier solo records. Yeah.
Okay, tell me what you were telling me.
Oh no, "Springtime in New York" is just this. He does a really good job of writing a song that's ostensibly about a season, but it's really about life in the city and this couple getting together in spring and breaking up in the winter, and just using. It's very very funny because it's Jonathan Richman. It's just using the seasons as the framework for something else.
Sure. I guess I use the seasons as a framework for something else, but for this I just want it to be kind of pure joy or pure pain. I could probably get into the metaphor a little bit more, but we just started, so it's just like a sense of something, and it's probably going to be instrumental too. So
you are doing scoring for both imaginary and real films.
Yeah.
Is that, as somebody who is in his head as much as you are and who is a literary person and likes to write, do you find writing instrumental music to be freeing?
Oh my God. Yeah. I love it. It's been so much fun. It's not even, we have no expectations for it except for to kind of get it out. It gets recognized a little bit. I don't know if it connects with people, but it's almost like we just don't care at this point. Not that we don't care, it's just we don't have this kind of, and that's kind of true of all the music we're writing and everything I've been working on is I'm not going to, a few albums I put out were like heartbreakers, because you put it out and then you just kind of either something goes wrong or you get attacked in a certain way or the tour goes terribly or
things that really, in a sense, have nothing to do with the thing that you've created.
Yeah, and you make this thing and you love it, but there's so many outside factors that can kind of derail it. It's tenuous.
And how is the instrumental divorced from that?
It's just we care, but we just don't care. It's like, we're going to make something that we really believe in. I'm going to make up this budget that's within reason and within our means. And and then let's see if it goes somewhere, if it goes a little further. It's almost like what a label would do. Then you can kind of put more money into it. If it is what it is, then that's it. But we still believe in it. It's like, we're not going to kick ourselves off of our roster. We're not going to drop ourselves.
So the expectations are different for instrumental music? Is that what you're getting at?
I think, like I said, it's for everything we're doing.
Yeah.
But right now, it's just that we can just find anything we want, make it. Hopefully it's great. Hopefully we'll have that kind of vision. Hopefully it'll connect with a few people. And, it's almost like starting out where I was supposed to start out. This is how it did start out. Everything was, when I started out and we had a couple records on polyvinyl, I expected nothing. I thought that we were just going to kind of tour and play to 150 people a night, and that's fun. It's if they're engaged. We played in the dirtiest, best places across the country. I don't know if that can happen anymore. It was just fun. People would just show up at these crazy places. Kilby Court in Salt Lake City is still there. And that's just one of the craziest places where you pull up on a tour. So many bands do this and it looks like you've landed in a shanty town and there's kind of stray dogs running around and nobody to tell you anything. And then you run into some guy and you're like, we're looking for this place. And he tells you you're there. You're at Kilby Court. And it's like a shack and you play a hot show to, 70 people who are just so excited. And it's like, how did this happen? It's such an experience. And that's what keeps me excited. Like, I want to do that again. Yeah. And then build back. There's always another chance. Until you're dead. But until then.
As somebody who essentially lived on the road for as long as you did, how difficult was it giving up that momentum and staying still?
The only thing I love about it is the way that you get to live in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, you don't, if something bad happened the night before, or even if something good happened, you're on to the next thing. You can't kind of dwell on fights or you get over things with your friends, you get over things with your band. You have to, or else you're done. It was a cool way of living, but I just, I started to get sick a lot, and I started to, I was unhealthy. I kept getting increasingly unhealthy. And it's hard to be around that much alcohol and that much sleeplessness and that much. It's just not a healthy. It wasn't a healthy place when I was doing it. And I think, people are more health-minded now. I think people are more focused on trying to be better to each other, although that doesn't seem to be working too well in the larger world. I think there's a way of doing it. I think I just have to kind of live my life as I have to, I think fixing my life as a person was the most important thing. And then hopefully that will hold up when I shove it off to sea, or it'll sink.
The part of actually getting off the road and staying put for a little while, that part wasn't difficult.
You miss a few things, but I just needed to, I think I needed to fix my brains. Yeah, sometimes I miss it. Sometimes I'll see routings of people and, oh yeah, that looks cool. And how, in the middle of winter, they're experiencing summer somewhere. And how, you show up in LA and it's just a really enthusiastic audience sometimes, or in Pacific Northwest or wherever, and so far away, and people know your music, and it's such an exciting thing. But I'm probably like writing songs more than I like anything else, even though it's torture and I have waves of writer's block constantly through my life, but I still love it.
Can you isolate what sort of the part of the process brings you the most joy?
I think as you're kind of zeroing in on the end of an album and you kind of know what it is, and you've been building this thing and you realize you've been subconsciously creating something that really resonates with you, but you're finding out about it as it's happening.
You've described your albums as concept albums, and in some cases it's pretty obvious, like the Winter EP is an obvious one. In most of these cases, though, is that something that you're seeking to do from the beginning, or is that thing actually just really coming into sharp relief toward the finish line?
I think it's always there, but if you can't say it too much while you're talking, like if I were to tell you the concept of the album that we're working on now, that is going to take a little while to finish. If I say it to you now and then I switch directions, then I really screwed it up, and then it's like
Do you feel like you're jinxing it?
Yeah, or I don't know. But, The Green Fury was about a friend who died. Emblems was kind of about switching between Philly and New York.
Mm-hmm.
Several Arrows Later, which is a hard one to say, was just kind of the joy and pain of being in New York. I mean, I could go on and on about what they are.
But there's a definite sense with like this one you're working on right now, for example, that the concept is going to shift or at least evolve between now and the end.
I hope it doesn't. I really know what it's about. The problem is the concept gets so tight that you're writing into it, that you're kind of like writing into a funnel, and you can. How many times can you use? Yeah. And it is about this whole internet thing that's happening.
No, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's just not. It doesn't seem to. It's just a strange. We are just really giving into it.
Is it broadly about politics, or?
I mean, I don't like
that's unavoidable, right?
I want to be political by just saying this is happening. I don't want to be political by. I'm not like a Joan Baez person, and I love some of her music, but I can't. I don't want to do that. I don't want to alienate people. I feel like that's part of the problem. Is the talking down to people is on, and then attacking people is just not working anymore. I don't know if it ever did, but I think that there are people who I care about who have different political opinions than me that almost seem like we should kill each other, except that I care about them. So I don't understand what's happening, and this is all exaggerated by that whole internet thing. And the will, like giving into it and then worshiping fame, like our worship of fame right now has kind of gotten crazy. Fame above art, fame above anything, money and fame above anything.
So what are you doing in your life to have a healthier relationship with online?
I don't know. I can't take it too seriously. Like I'm not going to, I think I used an emoji a few times, and I'm not going to do that because it's not real to me. I got in the trap of using them ironically, and then they sort of like crept in. Yeah. I mean, that's how I was doing it. I mean, 8-ball, taco, hot dog, where, I sat in that circle for a long time. And then I thought, I don't like this, and I want to just use words. And if that makes me sound like somebody's parent or something, I guess that's what it is. But I don't want to give in to you don't have to give in to all of it. I mean, it helps to sell records and it helps to connect to people. So I'm not above it, but it's, my value is measured in followers or likes. This is crazy. It just doesn't, that's not how it works. But if people aren't buying music, and I don't mind streams being a value. I wish that they would fix up the model and make it more lucrative for musicians. In your current situation, given that you've taken a step back from the road and you don't have that direct communication with people, that if anything, the internet has become a more valuable and important tool for you. Sure, but people want to see you on tour, and people want to see you. So if you're not, like, my days aren't always exciting, and I don't really know, and I don't really want to. I can only think of a few things. You're right. This is the way to keep connected with people. But that's changed too. I mean, a few years ago, they're like, oh, content, or something like that. And then that's become that's gone. I mean, I don't think a lot of people won't even remember that was a time for musicians, but it was, and it was, I'm glad that, I'm glad that's over, because it was kind of like, I don't want to make things for nothing. Yeah, it's good to stay in touch, and it helps. It does work. I can't think that way. Like I like one day on, one day off. I want to just not pay attention to it. And I'm also someone that still likes email, and that's become completely archaic now at this point. I have a lot of friends who say they just don't use email. I kind of don't understand it. They want to write text that lasts for 20 pages.
Yeah. I love email.
Okay, good. See?
I use email all the time.
I'm
a writer, so I'm in front of my computer all the time.
I need a long form. Yeah. I need to type with my hands, not with my thumbs. I will do the other. Like I have begun. I was writing a story on my phone in bed last night, and I was like, oh, I've become this monster. But it's not a bad monster.
Has your phone become a tool for music making, or at least lyric writing, note taking, things like that? I
mean, I always use the memo on it to get all my midnight yodels. Not for, I sit at the computer and I record, and then Chris and I dive in, and that's how. It's not it's. I don't want to think of it as my life in this thing, and I don't want to use it too much.
It's a funny thing doing something creative that we find ways to kind of trick ourselves into being productive. You're a runner. You do, or at least have done, lucid dreaming. Obviously, at least from the outside, you seem like a pretty prolific person. You put a lot of music out into the world.
I feel like I haven't done enough, but I'm just going to say that because that's the voice that's always going on in my head. You got to do more, Matt. Come on.
Why is that voice saying that to you?
Probably fear of dying, maybe a little bit. Which I'm not totally. I'm ready to die. I feel like.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah. Everyone should. It's like taxes. You always have to be like, face it, because it's going to happen.
You're ready, but you're not eager.
No, I'm not. I'm not trying to. Okay. I just feel like it's going to happen. I want to face it with with a good attitude. I wrote all the. Sometimes I think that I wrote all this music so I could then totally just, I don't listen to my own music, but when I'm older and, whatever I am, I can just, there's so many albums to listen to. I can listen.
It's nice to just be able to point to it, like a thing that you made that.
Yeah. I still know I can do better. I still know I can articulate something better in a way that's going to click with someone in a way that I haven't done before. That's maybe, who's that woman, Jay DeFeo, who made The Rose? Do you know about that? It's a piece of art. I think it's at the Whitney. I don't know if it shows all the time, but it's this huge thing she made. It was a couple tons in San Francisco. It had to be taken out of her house by a crane. They put it at a museum nearby and then kind of left it behind a wall for years. It's been restored, but that's what she was making for years. And then for the rest of her life, she was kind of doing reiterations of that in a certain sense. And so, until that point, when people would bring up seasons or nature, things that I like to use as kind of a border or even as the full subject, I felt...
You were worried that you were spinning your wheels earlier?
Yeah, and what I've realized is, you come back to these things in order to try to get deeper into it or to discover another whole angle of it. So therefore, I can write an instrumental album about summer that will sound like nothing else that we've ever done, and that's what I'm going to do. And I have to do it, and I'm excited about it. And so I don't know what the point and why I got so fired up about this, but I am fired up. I guess, what were you saying? Shit.
Well, maybe a way to reframe this is to look at this cycle that's focused on summer and look at previous things that you've done that, at least sort of like circled around that topic. And maybe you have this gift where you're able to more directly compare different periods of your life because they've taken on a similar frame. And, now that you have some distance, maybe it's easier for you to a little more objectively understand how you've grown as an artist.
I hope that's true. Words like, until a while ago, words like grow and artist were words that were hard for me to hear or say, but it's true. I'll say it. I want to grow as an artist. I want to move beyond and see things in a better way, and I keep going back to this, but live in a better way where, I'm not yelling at cars all the time or things like that.
Leaving New York has probably helped that part.
there's a lot of people that really don't pay attention to stop signs in my town, and with the dog on the leash, and that's made me. You'd be surprised how much time you can spend in therapy talking about like traffic rules and violations.
Sure, but I always think, and I've thought about it since I lived here. I always think about the river of slime in Ghostbusters too. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
The just pent up and not so pent up anger that people have because you're constantly forced to interact with other people all the time.
The weird thing about New York, and I think in terms of I learned that I wasn't going to have as much space as I wanted to, so I accepted, and I learned that everybody drives crazy, and it's weird how I accept it here. People bumping into me, I'm like, that's all right. But if someone touches me in Kingston, I'm going to kill him. No, I mean, not really. Yeah. But it feels there, I'm kind of, I don't know. I guess I was pretty calm about it. I just would go about my business. I used to slap the backs of cars as I ran by them if they cut me off or spit on the wind. Don't say that. I would do things. Sure. But I did it with a smile on my face. It was kind of funny because they're just stuck in a row of cars and they can't do anything. And I'm just cruising.
You said something in an interview. You articulated something that I've thought about but hadn't actually heard articulated. I mean, you said it in a very simple way, but that there's so many bands that, from, when I first became familiar with the music you were making, that time period of sort of the early aughts, or I guess just the aughts in general, that have just kind of disappeared. And I don't know how much of it, because, that's something that I lived through, and I lived through it in New York and covering music. I don't know how much of that is just a sort of a broader phenomenon with the music industry, but there does seem to be something very specific about that time of all of these really great, wonderful indie rock bands who maybe put out an album or two, and then, it didn't really burn out or fade away. They just kind of weren't there anymore.
Well, I think it was part of it's probably a business thing. I mean, you put out an album, and if you are on an okay label or the album does well, people get interested in you and give you money to do another album. And when something doesn't work or when something falls apart, it's like people don't. I think that happened a lot. I mean, it happened to a lot of friends of mine. Yeah. I know that, once you're not seemingly viable, everybody just disappears. They leave the party. And this goes to something I think most of all about the music industry and music, and I don't want to get all bogged down, but if we wanted more money for streams, and if we really wanted these things, the worst part about all of this is the music industry's biggest trick that they've pulled over everybody is to keep everybody at odds with each other. So it's like this huge battle of the bands, and it puts you in that mindset, like, that there's only so many pieces of the pie, and that, I'm going to be friends with these people, and, we have these labels that are like these small groups, and they're very inclusive, and some of them are great. I love some labels, but the fact is they keep a band from growing sometimes, and the smaller bands, God, there's a band from, do you know the band Hospitality?
Yeah. Oh, I love them.
I love them. And
they were on Merge, right?
They're on Merge, and it seemed
they were on the show a couple of years ago, actually.
Oh, great. Yeah. And they had songs about New York, which I just got the chills thinking about. But it seemed like, if you're a great band, but a smaller band on a great label, you're just going to have to, whereas if it was built right, these smaller bands, like they deserved this kind of, people should be listening to them.
Yeah.
A lot of people did, and a lot of people do, but there's not this kind of, it just feels like labels have this like group of bands, and they keep them apart from this, and I don't know.
I've talked to a lot of indie musicians who have been doing it for a while, and who was I talking to? Wooden Wand. I was talking to him, and he expressed this, and it's a sentiment I've heard a lot, which is just, I've been touring for this long. seems like I've either plateaued or maybe the shows are getting a little bit smaller. And I don't know how much of that is me. I don't know how much of that is the problems with the industry and maybe people not coming out and seeing music. I don't know how much of it is that my audience has sort of gotten older and maybe they're like, they don't want to come out to these shows or they're having kids. But, you know, it does seem like there's a certain shelf life to indie musicians of a certain level where it's just sort of like diminishing returns after a certain point.
Sure, and I could see that. I will accept these things, and it's all those ideas. They're probably all partially true.
Yeah,
like a bit or a piece of them, but still, that doesn't mean that making music isn't important to me. Like I realized, no, I don't want to tour relentlessly if kind of it's diminishing.
Yeah.
Because I would rather be at home writing music because that's more, you know, if it's not connecting with people, then just keep writing or, you know, or come up with a new idea. I mean, the reason I do it isn't just for other people, it's for myself. So I don't know what else I would do, really. I've gotten so stuck in it's working enough.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a millionaire.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a proud thousandaire and but I, you know, it could work better, but I don't think I'd want more than what I have. Even
during those conversations about, you know, backing away, all of those things, there was never a point when it seemed like this wasn't going to be your thing. This wasn't going to be your main.
You can never say never especially about giving up. But like, here's what would happen. If I did that, then I would write so many crazy songs because in some ways that's what happened. And I wrote out of all of that and I realized how much I love that part of it. If I wasn't, you know, connected to people on the internet or anything, I'd still write, you know, just for myself. In some ways, you know, when I write just words, I'm really just writing for myself. It's just working out what's going on in my head. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, that's probably one of my favorite things to do. So I don't think I would ever be able to stop. It is hard to make it the way that you earn money, but the only way to but you have to accept that it's a way to make money if you want to keep doing it in some ways. So, you know, it's like I said, one of my favorite parts is not embracing the business part of it, but not being terrified of it.
Have you played your music for your therapist?
Does that confidentiality work backwards and forwards?
You're allowed to say what you do.
What I do?
They are not allowed to say.
They've listened to my music. They know. They've associated my name with a Spotify profile and have listened, and they think I'm all right. I mean, I don't know.
I guess I just mean, you know, since music does seem to be such a therapeutic thing for you, and in some ways, therapy and music do seem to serve similar purposes.
Totally. I mean, I think I am much less guarded about the frustrating aspects of my mind that won't yield sometimes. And that's not podcast material because it's just kind of like, I feel like what I like about therapy and what I like about my therapist is it's just kind of whining. I mean, I guess I don't want to be that person and then I'm like, oh, I got it out. Like, this is why people do this.
Yeah. It's just not going to probably sound good on record.
No, it would sound, you know, like spoken word. Poor me and all, you know. It's not good. But it's I like my therapist. I like laughing about my life or laughing at myself in a confidential environment.